What's up, guys? Welcome back to the channel. As always, if you guys enjoy this video, please make sure to like and subscribe. It'll help me as I try to grow this channel and work on these videos more in the future. All right, so tonight we're talking about home defense guns, and I'm going to show you three options, and one in each category for somebody who's on a pretty tight budget. Okay, lots of people are on a budget. I've been on a budget myself in the past, and I still am. Whether you're parents or you are a single guy, one paycheck or whatever, you got to pay rent, you're in college, whatever the deal is, okay? Not most people can't go out and spend thousands and thousands of dollars on guns and just keep throwing away money toward, not throwing away, but throwing money into guns. So let's look at three options for the budget-minded folks out there who still, let's make sure that we aren't knocking on anybody who chooses to use budget weapons. I mean, these are still reliable, and guys, no matter how much money somebody has, every single person has the right to defend themselves, period. Okay? So I don't care if you are a millionaire or you're homeless. You have the right to defend yourself no matter how much money you have, okay? So let's, I understand in the gun community that there are quite a few people who like to justify their high-end purchases by putting down budget options, and I get it, that's fine, whatever. If you have money, this video is probably not so much for you anyways, okay? But this is for the people out there who are on a tight budget, everyday Americans, who need something to defend themselves and defend their family. Okay, without further ado, I've got three options here, and I thought that these would just each represent each category. Okay, we've got a rifle, a shotgun, and a pistol. Okay, all three of these guns, guys, when I say on a budget, these three guns I got for $400, just under $500, and $300. Okay. That's the budget we're talking here right now. These aren't super tight budget. Okay, like you could get something a little bit lower, and we'll talk about that. But these are options that would be like, pretty darn good for somebody on a budget. This is what I think you should strive for if you're on a budget, if you can, okay? And so we're just going to start with the rifle, okay? The rifle is a PSA, a Palmetto State Armory build that I put together. This is just their classic Freedom rifle, okay? Nothing fancy about it. 16-inch barrel, old-fashioned round handguards, A2 grip, the old-fashioned plastic stock, and a carry handle, okay? You'll see in my other videos, I think that the carry handle or some sort of sturdy iron sight is better. It's a better budget option than a scope if you're on a tight budget, if that makes sense. Like for example, if you only have $100 or less, if you're spending less than $100 on the sights for your gun, I would not buy a scope. I wouldn't bother buying a scope for $80. This carry handle was like 70 some dollars, okay? So this carry handle is going to be way more reliable than any kind of scope that you're going to get for $70. Now, if you start spending over $100, then you can start getting into some optics that are worth buying, okay? Like the Sig Romeo 5 or, some Vortex and all that kind of stuff. They make pretty decent budget options. But for somebody who's on a real tight budget, if you're just trying to keep this as cheap as possible and you don't want to spend a bunch of money on an optic, go with iron sights, okay? Because we're talking here about home defense, okay? That's pretty much all we're talking about is home defense right now. You could still use this in like a combat scenario, okay? Absolutely you could. You have to practice with it a little bit extra, a little bit more than if you were to use magnified optics and stuff. So the iron sights, they work, okay? They're not perfect. Guys, I'm not sitting here saying that these iron sights would be better than a scope, okay? Probably not. But for $80, they're definitely better than an $80 scope, if that makes sense. Okay, so this is, again, a Palmetto build that I put together. It all came in under $500. If you look around in, on the internet, you'll see they have these probably complete rifles going for like $550, And you know, you can also search around and you can find something like a Ruger AR-556 or a Smith & Wesson M&P Sport. Even the older versions, guys, I wouldn't be afraid to buy one of them either. Especially if you could find like an M&P Sport that's maybe a little bit used. That's a good option too, I think. But the Palmettos, guys, I've had no issues with them. And for, you know, I've seen some people can get these for, you know, actually, you know, when I think about it, this gun probably was closer to $400. But you know, you can usually be out the door or off the website under $400 or $500 for a very good rifle. Okay, sure, you're not gonna, like, you know, maybe this wouldn't be the gun you'd want to take to Afghanistan if you were going out for deployment. But last time I checked, that's not what I'm doing with this gun, okay? This is for home defense, so it just needs to work, okay? The iron sights, you know, perfectly fine at close distance. Obviously, you have to practice with them a little bit. With the AR-15, guys, you're getting good capacity, good firepower. And anymore, guys, the AR-15 is very reliable, okay? It's not like the old days where, you know, the AK was way better than the AR because of reliability, as far as reliability, maybe not accuracy and stuff, but it's not like that anymore, okay? The AR-15 is extremely reliable. I've never had a malfunction with this gun. I have 4 AR-15s, guys, and I've only ever had like 2 malfunctions, and it was using cheap toolless steel-cased ammo that it just didn't have enough power to cycle in my A2 fixed buttstock, like the full rifle length gas system. That was the only time I ever had a malfunction with an AR-15, okay? So can't go wrong with a Palmetto, guys, in my opinion, for the price. Obviously, if you've got a lot of money, then, you know, whatever. Don't, you know, you probably shouldn't be watching this video unless you're just looking for another cheap budget rifle that would be good for, you know, like a loaner rifle or something like that, okay? Or a truck gun. This is a perfect truck gun in my opinion, okay? All right, so that's the AR-15, cheap as possible. Here's the thing, guys. When I say cheap as possible, I wouldn't go out and get like the, you know, the polymer receiver ones and stuff. Like, I would just try to, you know, if you're gonna buy a semi-auto AR, like a semi-auto like an AR-15, I think you should try to at least get a half decent one, okay, to make sure that it is reliable, because it is it's a fairly complicated system, comparatively speaking to some other guns when it comes to the gas and all that. You know, just any semi-automatic in general, there's just going to be more room for error because it's a functioning machine. There's more moving parts and stuff. But you definitely, I think you should probably, you know, try to make sure you get a half decent AR-15 again, so that you make sure that it works, okay? And that goes for really any of these guns, guys. You could spend $250 on a gun, or you could spend $350 on a, you know, probably a much better gun, okay? In this case, you could go find some like old beat up, cheap, really cheap AR-15 for $300 or something, and or, you know, think about like a High Point carbine, okay? Nothing against the High Points, but if I was to spend like, and I did, guys, I had a High Point carbine in college, okay? I was young and dumb, and I spent like $250 on a High Point carbine, 9mm, and it jammed all the time, okay? I wish somebody would have just, you know, told me, dude, save another $100 and get a Palmetto State Armory AR-15. I would have been so much happier, okay? It would have been more reliable, and I probably would have kept it and not traded it away like I did with the High Point. So I think, you know, when it comes to a budget, yeah, you can, you know, be on a very tight budget, but at the same time, if you're talking about waiting another month or another 2 months even, or 3 months, to the point where you can save up and get a little bit better to like a good entry-level AR, then go with that, okay? And that goes for, again, pretty much any other gun as well. And so that kind of goes along with the shotgun, okay? Now the shotgun, this is a Mossberg 500, okay? And this is another gun I bought used. Okay, I bought this off of a buddy and paid $300 for it. Okay, and you can get basically the same thing. Okay, for a Maverick 88 for like $200. Okay, or less than 300. Or you can spend a little bit more on the actual 500 for like $400 or $500. Okay, but you can get these. The Maverick 88, I would say, is probably going to be your best gun that you can buy under $300, in my opinion, for a shotgun at least, or for a long gun in general, actually. Even the AR-15, you're probably not going to find a great AR-15 for $250. But if you get a Maverick 88 for $250, I bet you that sucker's going to work, and it's going to work for a long time, okay? Because it's a pump action. It's very reliable in general. It's very simple, okay? As long as, you keep it maintained and stuff, it's going to work probably forever, okay? So, yeah, pump action is probably the way to go if you are on a really tight budget, okay? Like under $300, I would start with a shotgun, okay? Obviously, it's not going to have as much range. It's not going to be quite as accurate. It's not going to have the magazine capacity, but it definitely has plenty of firepower. There's no doubt about that, okay? You start talking about rifled slugs, okay, which is what I like to keep in this, mainly because I live out in the country where if we ever had to happen to have some sort of bear problem, I like to have slugs in there. But, you run slugs or buckshot in a 12 gauge, and you are really in pretty good shape as far as firepower, okay? So a good cheap shotgun, $200 or $300, can't beat it, guys, okay? Now, like, I actually have a shotgun I paid $100 for, a Stevens 320. I got it on a sale. And I've never had any issues with it either. So, I mean, if you really are in a really tight budget, you probably could pay less than $200 and get a decent shotgun. Okay, the same can't be said for a semi-automatic rifle or even probably a semi-auto pistol, in my opinion, at least for home defense. You can get, we'll talk about pistols here in a second, okay? So, yeah, there's the Mossberg. Now, guys, I don't have these guns really set up with lights and everything on them right now. I think a light is necessary for your home defense gun if you can afford it, okay? But, maybe you can't afford it. If you don't need a light, okay? Hopefully you have lights in your house. You can turn on the switch, right? To identify your target. Ideally, you'd have a light, but, that's in a perfect world, okay? If you're on a really tight budget, don't feel like you have to be a super cool tactical ninja and have a light and everything on your gun just to be able to defend your house. You can do it. I mean, guys, let's be real. You could defend your house with a baseball bat if you had to, okay? But just a shotgun or a decent AR-15 is going to be pretty good. Now, this is my last gun that I'm going to go over, but in my opinion, this is the gun you should look for first, okay? This is the gun that I think you should be trying to find. If you are on a tight budget, you should look for a handgun first, okay? And a decent handgun, okay? Again, this goes along with like the AR-15. Sure, you might be able to find, like a High Point, okay? I'm just going to pick on High Point. I'm not trying to come at you or anything. If that's what you got, that's what you got. My buddy has a High Point pistol, and I actually kind of like it. I mean, like, just as like a cheap gun, a cheap beater gun or a throwaway gun or whatever. But anyways, you got to spend a little bit of extra money when you're buying a semi-auto handgun for self-defense. And revolvers, you're probably not going to find a real great revolver under $200 or $300. So why am I showing you a $600 gun if I'm talking about budget guns, budget handguns? Well, this is not a $600 gun. I paid $400 for this one. Okay, this was a used Glock. I went to my local gun shop. I was looking around for a new gun. I really wasn't even sure exactly what I wanted. Okay. And I checked out this Glock 45 in the used shelf. It was $400, and it looked good. It was in pretty good shape. It was the OD green, the color I wanted it, and I've used it for almost a year now after, and probably have close to 1,000 rounds through it, and not a single malfunction. Okay, guys, it's pretty hard to break a Glock. Okay, so what I'm trying to tell you here is, rather than go out and get a, again, I'm not trying to pick on specific brands. If you want to get these brands, go for it. I'm not saying you shouldn't get them. I'm just showing you what I would do. Like, you could get one of the Sky or the the SCCY. I don't know how you pronounce it. You could get one of those for like $200. You could get like I don't know, even a Canic, which they're a little bit better, I guess. But like a Taurus, there's one Taurus. Okay, you could get a Taurus for $250, or you could save up another $100 or so and get yourself a good used Glock that is probably gonna be a much better pistol. Okay, you can't go wrong with a Glock, pretty much. I know you may not like them, and that's a totally different story. If you don't like the feel of it and everything, that's totally different. I didn't originally like the feel of it, but it just took a little bit of me, having an open mind and getting used to it and trying it out, and to the point where I loved my Glocks because mainly they're reliable. That's the number one reason I liked them. So you find a good used Glock like this, and I bet you that I would get less malfunctions from this in 1,000 rounds than somebody with a brand new Taurus, okay, or High Point or SCCY or whatever, okay, because it's a very high quality gun, and it would be very hard for somebody to break it, okay. And the other thing is, if you go to a local gun shop that you trust, and you kind of like, sort of at least know the people or know of the people, chances are, like mine, they told me, they had no problem. I looked it all over. I took it all apart and everything. And, they have a gunsmith check every gun. Maybe not a gunsmith, but they have somebody check out every gun before they put it on the market, or on the used rack, to obviously make sure it's safe and everything. So I think going with a used Glock would be a much... I think that's probably like... And it doesn't have to be a Glock. Could be a Smith & Wesson, could be a Ruger, could be a SIG, could be Springfield, could be, whatever, okay? A good brand, though. Like, a higher... Not even higher end, but just a quality brand, okay? Somebody who's known for quality. And that reminds me, police trade-ins. You can find Glocks right now online for $300, guys, okay? Police trade-in, especially the 40 cals, because the police officers or the police departments are going away from 40 cal. You can find those pretty cheap right now. And there probably are some really good guns out there in police trade-in, because police officers a lot of times actually don't shoot their handguns that often, okay? So you can search and you can find yourself a good used Glock. Or what I was saying is, it could be a Smith & Wesson. I recently saw it, AIM Surplus had a Smith & Wesson. I think it's the original M&P, the police gun that they used, the 40 cal, and it was, I think, $230. Okay? I would much rather have that used Smith & Wesson M&P than a Taurus. That's just my personal opinion, okay? You can make up your own mind, and that's fine. If you have a Taurus and it works great, that's great for you. Me personally, I'd like to just find a good gun that's used and, go with that for home defense. So in this case, this is my Glock 45. It's $400. This isn't necessarily my home defense pistol. I have a 10 millimeter for that right now. But this gun is just a great gun for, $400 that I got on the used market. And I think that personally, you should probably do something similar rather than waste your money on a really cheap handgun that's not going to last. Okay, and so that sort of concludes our discussion here tonight on home defense guns. You know, I think that was giving you 3 options that obviously you don't have to go with my options, but it's just options. It's just showing you there are plenty of options for people out there on a budget. Okay, all right, so again, as always guys, thanks for watching the video. Like and subscribe, and as always, keep blasting.